My name is Agnieszka Kubal. I'm a lecturer in sociology here at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies. And my research interests, I'm particularly, I would call myself a sociolegal and migration scholar. So I'm interested at the intersection of these two disciplines. And my research looks at how migrants build a relationship with the legal system of the country to which they arrive. I came to Russia as part of the fieldwork for my British Academy postdoctoral project. The project was entitled Human Rights and Access to Justice for Migrants in Russia. And I was particularly interested in Central Asian migrants. So the people who come to work in Russia as migrant workers. But because I was doing fieldwork in an NGO that does legal help or looks after both migrants and refugees, as well as people in precarious legal situations. Therefore, I got interested in the topic of refugees in Russia as well. So one day I was in a consulting room, shadowing a lawyer, as I would normally do as part of my fieldwork. It was a small room, a little bit like this one, where she was seeing her clients. And the case landed on her desk. And that case was about 2 Syrians and 1 Palestinian who were found in Russia working in an undocumented way, for which the minimum penalty is deportation. When the case landed on the desk of the lawyer whom I was shadowing, the case has already been quite advanced in the sense that the men were found guilty working in an undocumented way by a court of the first instance, and they were in a detention center awaiting their deportation. However, according to the Russian administrative law, they had a right to appeal that judgment to a court of appeal, to a court of a higher instance. And the lawyer decided to take on the case and argue that these men were not migrant workers, but they were refugees. Deporting them would mean sending them back to war, sending them back to Syria, to a place where they were facing indiscriminate violence. I asked the lawyer if I could shadow her to the court hearing. She said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So we went to the court, it was slightly outside of Moscow. And during the court hearing, the lawyer very succinctly presented her line of defense. She wanted to divert the court's attention from the undocumented work to the fact that if the court was to go ahead with the deportation and upheld the decision of the deportation, that would be hugely disproportionate. That would mean sending the people to war. So you have 3 months of undocumented work and deportation to war as the penalty. Where's the balance here? The judge, however, disagreed with those arguments. He said, okay, if these men were indeed refugees, why they haven't applied for asylum in Russia? They were caught red-handed working in an undocumented way, working illegally. They were caught red-handed working illegally. And the court said the minimum penalty for this is deportation and the fine, and my hands are tied. I just have to enforce the law. So we lost. Well, the lawyer lost the case. And we returned back to Moscow. Our moods were obviously quite low because the men were taken back to the detention center where they were awaiting the deportation. But then we thought, no, we cannot leave the case like this. We cannot allow the men to be deported to Syria. So the lawyer and myself, we drafted a petition to the European Court of Human Rights, where we outlined the situation, and we asked the court to start a particular mechanism, which is called Rule 39 of the Rules of the Court, by which the court puts injunction on the enforcement of any domestic judgment or on any judgment at the domestic level until the case will be heard before the European Court of Human Rights. And we received the response from the European Court of Human Rights within 24 hours, and the court indeed agreed with our assessment of that case and has granted the Rule 39 of the Rules of the Court, saying to Russia quite explicitly, you must not deport the man to Syria or anywhere until the case will be heard before the European Court of Human Rights. After 18 months of looking at the submissions both by the government and ourselves, the European Court of Human Rights delivered a judgment in the case LM, which is now known as the case LM and others versus Russia. The court decided that if Russia was to go ahead and deport the men, that would give rise to violation of Article 2, right to life, and Article 3, prohibition of inhuman and degrading treatment. The court also decided that the length of the men's detention in Russia, so nearly 18 months, violated their right to liberty, and the court awarded the men compensation to that effect. Until very recently, we thought that the question of the so-called European refugee crisis is over, that all the Syrians that were supposed to leave Syria due to the war would have found shelter either in various European countries or in Lebanon and in Turkey, and that the situation in Syria was somewhat improving. However, the most recent turn of events, particularly the so-called anti-terrorist operation of the Turkish government in northern Syria, in the Kurdish strongholds, demonstrate that we are still talking very much about war in Syria. It is very much still a place where there's an ongoing military conflict. So that case gains a new relevance in light of those very recent political developments, because it demonstrates that nobody, and I stress absolutely nobody, should be deported to war in Syria.